at the age of 87. She was Britain's first female prime minister, serving 3 terms in office. Known as the Iron Lady, Margaret Thatcher became synonymous with austerity economics as a close ally of President Ronald Reagan. She famously declared to critics of neoliberal capitalism that, quote, there is no alternative. Her long-running battle with striking British miners dealt a major blow to the union movement in Britain and ushered in a wave of privatizations. On foreign policy, Thatcher presided over the Falklands War with Argentina and provided critical support to the Chilean dictator Augusto Pinochet. To discuss Margaret Thatcher's legacy, we go now to London, where we're joined by Tariq Ali, British-Pakistani political commentator, writer, activist, and editor of the New Left Review. In these last minutes we have, Tariq, talk about the legacy of, talk about the tenure of the former British Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher.
Amy, there's no doubt about it. She transformed British politics. She basically won over the opposition. Her legacy is still very much in force, so she's not at all dead in terms of what is going on in this country. Her policies are being carried out by the coalition government. Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, new Labour prime ministers, were completely enthralled to her. She was the first person invited by Blair to 10 Downing Street when he became Prime Minister to show how much he owed her, and Gordon Brown did exactly the same thing. So we have had a continuum that the process Margaret Thatcher started off was carried on by Blair, who used rhetoric on the Iraq, Kosovo, and Afghan wars very similar to the rhetoric she used on the Falklands, and this policy has continued. So her legacy is effectively to have wrecked Britain economically and to have made it a total vassal state of the American empire.
Tariq, can you talk about the legacy of Thatcherism for the working class in Britain?
Well, basically, she took on the workers' movement, which had become very strong. Trade unions were very powerful in this country, and they were effectively challenging capital by demanding a share of the take and being quite successful. The miners' union, one of the most respected unions in the country, challenged her. She organized the state, the use of the police, use of the secret services to defeat them. And she did it, and she referred to union militancy as the enemy within. She was very hot on enemies, either abroad or at home. And that phrase, the enemy within, has been used subsequently against dissidents of other sorts by her successors.
Can you talk about her foreign policy from the Falklands War, and we only have a minute, to her support of the Apartheid regime, calling Nelson Mandela a terrorist?
Well, she did call Nelson Mandela a terrorist, but one should remember that the Western governments as a whole were not at all friendly to the ANC, sustained and maintained apartheid, with a few exceptions in Scandinavia, throughout it. And Thatcher was upfront about it. Her foreign policy was deeply conservative and reactionary, and that foreign policy has not changed since she was forced out on Europe. Europe is still a big, big divisive issue in the country and within the Conservative Party as a whole. And so on every level, Amy, domestic level, international level, Thatcherism continues. One shouldn't imagine that it's over, and I hate to say this, but the fact that we haven't come up, or no one has, neither the centre-left or anyone else has managed to come up with an alternative to the Wall Street crash of 2008 does indicate that there was some truth in her statement that there is no alternative, at least as far as the mainstream is concerned.
Tariq Ali, I want to thank you for being with us, British-Pakistani political commentator, historian, activist, filmmaker, novelist, and editor of the New Left Review, joining us from London on this late-breaking news that the former Prime Minister of Britain, Margaret Thatcher, has died.